thanks to you all for the invitation. And yes, I talked about the session earlier today, and I know that there are a lot of professionals here in the call, and I know that what I want to show you is maybe not so professional like you would name it. But I hope it's okay, because the approach for WVD, Windows Virtual Desktop, is sometimes a little bit other, and today I will show you an easy approach, and not the and maybe not the best full automated with Intune and co way. But I will do that maybe once in the future. So I hope that is okay for you. Okay. Yeah, Windows Virtual Desktop. I think that is a service from Microsoft, which is or has started or is used a lot in the last year. And I think the reason is, for example, is COVID, because a lot of companies decide to offer their application to end users very fast in a way where they can access the application from home or from anywhere. And today I will talk about the challenges from an administrative perspective on how to deploy Windows Virtual Desktop to your users and how to manage WVD. And there are really some challenges even for the deployment, or if you start with the deployment from scratch. So let me start with the next slide. I will show the most part in real life as a demo, so you only have to see a few slides. Today I see that there are 3 different approaches about how to manage WVD how to manage a WVD. I know there are some others, but let me focus on these 3 ways. Today you can manage WVD from the Azure portal. That means you can create your resources like the host pool, application groups, and so on in the Azure portal, and you can deploy images in a not really easy way, but you can deploy images as a session host to be part of your WVD deployment. But you have some limitations. One limitation is that you have to enter the local administrator account and password, and the user who is able to join a computer to a domain, to a native domain, every time you want to deploy a session host. And you have some other limitation. For example, if you have decided to have a specific VM size in a host pool, you are fixed to this VM size. You cannot change this later. So that is, in my opinion, it's not the best experience for an administrator. The other way is, and that is a really cool way, and that is what I really love and I started with 18 months ago, that is working with PowerShell. And maybe you remember that the first version of WVD, was only manageable with PowerShell. So there was no integration into a portal and no really other solution from Microsoft to create the resources, roll out session host, and so on, or even log off user. So the only way was to do it with PowerShell, and that is, for example, if you want to log off a user, you have to write a long line of PowerShell and log it off. But the good thing with PowerShell is that you can use it and you can handle every scenario in an automatic way, and that is what I do more and more in enterprise environment, using PowerShell, not only to build WVD, more to create the images and roll out session host into the host pools. So that was my first approach, and I love this approach. But you have to be you have to work with PowerShell, and you have to know how to work with PowerShell and with Azure. So the experience is really good if you know how to work with PowerShell. The third approach I want to talk about is that solution that I built, I think more than 1 year ago. That is an Win32 application running in 64-bit, which allows you to manage WVD straightforward. So you can use it, and you could use this in the past for the older WVD version to create the host pools, the application groups, and so on, add users to application group. That was one focus, and the other focus was, and that is what I'm using in nearly every POC I'm working in, is to build images from Golden Master to then deploy those images in an easy way as session host without the limitation that you cannot change the VM size afterwards. So that will even works, and some other ways. And that is what I want to show you today, the solution WVDAdmin and how to work with WVD and how to deploy session hosts. Let's come to one of the challenge in the deployment. If you go the native way in the Azure portal to create an image, a disk image, then the normal way is that you create a Golden Master, your master image, that is normally a deployment from of a Windows 10 multi-session host into your environment. You then log on, install all the tools, make the Windows updates, install the application for sure. And after that, you run sysprep on this virtual machine to clean that up. And after that, you go into the Azure portal to this virtual machine and click on the generalize button. And that generalizes the virtual machine with sysprep, what we have run before inside the virtual machine. And after that, you can grab in the Azure portal an image. And that image can then be used to roll out session host. The bad thing is that if you go for this way, your master is no longer usable because you have sysprep this virtual machine and you cannot reuse it later to maybe install updates in a week or other application. So the only way is to recreate your master from that image, and then you go into this loop that you have a master, an image, which is sysprep, then a new master, sysprep again, and so on. And that takes time, and yeah, I think it's not really good for the virtual machine if you have this sysprep in a loop. So the way I go with WVDAdmin is nearly the same with one different. I also have one virtual machine, and I will show it later, installed with Windows 10 multi-session host. It is joined to the domain so that I can install my application, Windows updates, and test the application in my domain environment. I can do this manually, or I'm pretty sure you would prefer this with a software deployment tool of your choice. So that is the same way. After that, you have a virtual machine with all the application in, and what I do then is, if you use WVDAdmin and you want to create a disk image from this virtual machine, it first makes a snapshot. From the snapshot, it makes another virtual disk, then a virtual machine. So after that, I have a copy of my original master VM. And then I do all this generalizing and the sysprepping and some other stuff with this copy of my original. So at the end, I will have a disk image, and I have the untouched Golden Master that I can reuse maybe next week to install new Windows updates, application updates, and so on. And it's always clean and fresh without any sysprep running on that. So that is the way I'm going for. And yes, for sure, you could do that with PowerShell in the same way. So let me start the demo. So let me switch. So let me open first my Azure portal to show you my environment or my virtual machine. So that's my Azure environment. I have a lot of virtual machine running, and I have some virtual machines starting with T-WVD. T is for template. So these are my Golden Master, my master virtual machine. For example, this one. This is a virtual machine installed with Windows 10 multi-session host. And let me go directly to this virtual machine. I opened a remote desktop session. And what I normally do if I show a demo, I have this virtual machine that is still domain joined, and I install some Windows updates and application. And for a demo, I often go for this Ninite. I think a lot of you know that is easy to use to install some of this popular application like Notepad++, one of my favorite application, and to prepare a session, Paint.net. So you can then easily install it or use your System Center, Configuration Manager, or any other software deployment solution to install application. What I also do to speed up a virtual machine in Azure is that I do some optimization, and I do the optimization from the VDI guys that is in project from the VDI guys, which allows you or gives you some scripts to improve the performance of your session host or your virtual machine, which becomes session host later. For example, it disables some of the Windows 10 features like location service, because a virtual machine normally don't move inside the data center, and some other things. So that is you could also use this, and that is an easy approach. If you do it with WVDAdmin, you can download this repository, and then you can store, and I prepare that, you can store the content of the zip file into the program data folder. That is what I have done. And if you do that, and if you copy the content into the folder optimize, it will later be triggered during the image process and the rollout process to do some optimization. What I prefer to do, if I prepare that, I go once into this folder and I modify this PS1 file, which do later the optimization, because there's one step in that takes ages. There's one step is to clean up the disk, and cleaning up the disk means, in this case, let me try to find it very fast. Yeah, that is disk cleanup that enumerates through the file system and checks for some extensions and will remove that. But this takes very long, so I normally makes this condition always false if I enter some things in front of, which never happens or is never true, to avoid this step. So another important thing, if you go for the optimization, they have some optimization in which are configured in this JSON files. And there are two important things you have to know and you have to change normally to avoid that some services or some application are removed you later want to have. For example, if you go into the AppX packages, you will find the calculator in the list of application to disable. But I personally want to have the calculator in, so I would remove this step, or I could say, don't disable this, leave this enabled, and then it's okay, and then the calculator will not be removed later in your image. Another thing is you have to keep in mind and maybe change. There is also the Windows Update service in that is normally disabled by the script, but you can change this as well if you want to have the Windows Update service enabled, which I normally left. Update, and that is disabled, and you can change it to enable or to let it enabled in the optimization process. So that is good, but what I don't do, I don't run this script on my gold master to prevent that something goes wrong. I only place this in this location, and later in the imaging process and rollout process, it will be automatically triggered. So Paint is there, Google is there, and I installed Paint and Notepad++. So after that, if you think your golden master is fine, then shut it down inside of Windows and give it a while to come down, and then you can grab an image from that with WVDAdmin. And WVDAdmin looks like that. Okay, like that. Let me reload my environment. This loads all of my resources, resources like my Azure Virtual Machine, existing images, and so on. And it will read the Windows Virtual Desktop environment. I minimize here, Christian. So give it a second. And then let me expand the Azure node. And in Azure node, you have the virtual machines and the resource groups. And inside the resource group, there are my virtual machine, like my gold master. That is the one I have worked with. And let me show another one, because sometimes it takes a while to virtual machine to come down or to get deallocated later. But let me do it with this one. To create a template image, you right click and select create a template image. Then you give it a name. I often go enter the date into this 20. And then I select, sorry, I have to select the virtual machine, the TWVD basic 20, and for the image later, a resource group to store the image. And that is all. Then you can click on capture. And if you check the log file, it makes first the snapshot and then a copy of the virtual machine, of the original virtual machine. And with this virtual machine, it will start a script on this virtual machine directly over the Azure API. And this script makes some operations before it then runs sysprep at the end. And if you ever worked with sysprep at Windows 10, you may run into some issue that you cannot run sysprep if you have some universal apps installed for one user, but not for all users, and some other typical problems you have with Windows 10 and sysprep. And that is, and in the script, which is now injected right now into the virtual machine, there are some workarounds to handle this issue you normally have with universal apps and sysprep. So that is what I figured out over the time. And I saw Mr. Conan in the call. I remember 1 or 2 years ago where we had some issues with this universal apps because they blocked sysprep from running. But that is, I think, really fine. And that will take maybe 5 to 10 minutes. And after that, we will see this image under the image node. I have some images already here. So that are all my images I created from several Windows 10 virtual machines. So I think a good way is now to show how to deploy a Windows 10 image or a Windows 7 image or a Windows Server 2019 image. So that makes no difference. It works with all of the Windows versions starting from Windows 7, which is always supported in WVD. So let me select this image. If you have later your image, you can right click and create session host from that image for WVD. And that is pretty straightforward. You give it a naming schema and you can use this hashtags for counting up the numbers inside the name. And then let me define, I want to have 6 virtual machine based on that image. And then I select the host pool. I have some host pools in my environment. Let me go for the Canada host pool because that fits to this name. And then I have to select the subnet for my virtual machines and some other things like the resource group and the disk. I typically go for standard SSD because they have a good price performance ratio. And then I have to select the virtual machine size. And that is what you can do every time. You can deploy the one size today and another size tomorrow inside the same host pool. Let me go for the DS3v2. And after that, all other data are still in. For example, here is the domain user who is able to add the new session host to the domain, and some other data which are stored encrypted on my physical virtual machine so that I don't have to enter it again and again. And then let us click on rollout, and then it starts rolling out 6 new session hosts. And I think that also took maybe 5 to 10 minutes before we can see them. So let me show you what you can do as well while we are waiting for the session host to be rolled out and to the image to be taken. In the WVD, V2 stands for the newer Windows Virtual Desktop version, because there was the older before. You have your host pools, and inside the host pools, you can see, for example, that is my design host pool, which I often use to show some information. In this design host pool, there are currently 18 sessions, and each of the session hosts accept up to 4 users. And that is a good point. We can see all the users over all session hosts here in the tab close to the logs. If I go for sessions v2, I can see all my users connected to the virtual machines in the environment via WVD. And what I can do in this part is I can select some users. I can log them off, or can send some messages. Let me send one message to these 2 users. And that is what you can easily do. You can do batch operation to your users. That is a point you cannot do in the Azure portal right now, I guess. That often changed, so something I have to think about it. What I say, I'm not sure if it's still true. And what you can do as well, you can mirror or shadow your user. That works if you are in the same network as the session host, which I'm not right now. Then you can click this to show the user's or to see the user's desktop if the user accepts your connection. So that is what you can do from this side to work with the user session, and for sure you can filter for a partial string of a user or a host pool or a session host. So let me go to the session host. Here are my session hosts for this host pool, and let me show you the Canada host pool. I think there are no session hosts right now. We are expecting some session hosts later. And what you can do here is you can select host pools. You can disable the log-ons. That means that you switch this session host into the drain mode. So it's now in the drain mode. And a good thing what you can do from here is and yeah, for sure you can stop the virtual machine, restart or remove them, but you can run batch scripts or batch actions on this session host. You have here a drop-down list showing some scripts. For example, I have one script that triggers the Windows updates inside the virtual machine in the same way if an administrator logs on to a virtual machine, go to Windows Update, search for updates, install updates, and so on. And that is what happens if I select this script and run the script. And I know that is not the professional way to manage an environment, but sometimes it's easy to do it maybe in this way as a workaround maybe. What you can do as well is you have some custom scripts in, and the custom scripts are really cool. The custom scripts are in the program files folder of WVDAdmin, and there are all the other scripts in. Let me scroll to the PowerShell scripts. Oh, it was not helpful. So let me go to the PowerShell script. Here are all the scripts in, like triggering the Windows update. That is this script. Enable screen capturing and other things you can remote enable on session hosts. And what you can do as well, you can use a custom script, make a copy of that so you can have a lot of custom script in. And then you can give it a name that is in the first line, like custom script. That is what you can see here in the drop-down box. And if you click on run script, you see here a description. That is what you can enter here as well. So that is the description part. And then you can add your function between these 2 lines, custom script starts and custom script ends. And the good thing is all what you put in here runs in the system context of the virtual machine. So that is maybe useful if you have to fast change something on all environments and you don't have a software distribution or software installation deployment solution. So that is maybe a little bit helpful in a not very professional way. So let me close that and don't do that. So that can be used on the session hosts, but you can do the same on each virtual machine in your environment. If I go back to the Azure node and click on virtual machines, it lists me all my virtual machine in my subscriptions I have. And then I can filter in the same way for a name, the TWVD, to see the templates, or if the virtual machine are running. I often do that in the evening to check how many virtual machines are running in my test environment, to don't forget to shut them down. That is what I can do in this way as well. But I can also, and let me do that, I can also select some virtual machines and run the same script on them. For example, run Windows updates. And let me do that for this virtual machine, because that I'm sure that needs some updates. Run script. And then it starts the update script inside the virtual machine using the Azure API. That are all then in the logs. Applying script engine, and that is the script engine for installing the updates to the virtual machine. So that is what you can use for management. What you also can do, if you're familiar with Windows Virtual Desktop, then you know that the user normally having FSLogix profiles, and in some cases you will see that the user cannot log on or log in because it looks like that the FSLogix profile is not closed, the file handle is not closed. That sometimes happens, and from WVDAdmin you can expand the storage accounts, and then you can see open file handles on a selected storage account. So that are all the FSLogix profiles. And if you have one user with this problem, you can select all of his VHD or VHD access, and then you can terminate the file handle. And after that, the user can log on again without any problems. And hopefully this user will not have any problems right now while I'm terminating the VHD files, the file handles, while the user is still logged on. But I don't think so. So some other parts, yes, for sure, you can create host pools from that and all the stuff you would expect, but I think that is not so interesting to see. Let me go to the Canada host pool and let me click on refresh to see if we have session host in. And yes, from our 6 session hosts, 5 are ready right now, and I think the last one takes a minute or so, and then it will be available as well and can be used by the users. Okay, it's available now. And that is a really easy approach, because all of this virtual machine, the session host, are like my gold master I have created before. And it's also a way how to update session hosts or host pools. I could switch this session host into the drain mode and roll out new ones, or what I would recommend is to have another host pool, a staging host pool and a productive host pool, and you roll out new session hosts to the new host pool, and then use permission for the user to switch them from one host pool to the other one, and use then the older host pool as the next staging host pool. So let me check. We have session hosts. We talked about how to make batch processing of virtual machines. There's one cool part I want to show you. That is what I built in this week. Normally, a virtual machine disk image based on Windows 10 has a size of 128 gigabytes. And that is okay, and it is good. Because you have space to install some application, but sometimes you want to have a lower disk size because of one reason. And the reason is you can roll out session host as an ephemeral disk system. Let me show it here, roll out. So I selected the standard SSD. You could also deploy the virtual machine directly to an Azure hypervisor by using ephemeral disk. That means that the virtual machine is created on the hypervisor without a network disk, and the operating system will run on the cache of the virtual machine. Unfortunately, not each virtual machine size supports ephemeral disk, and the other thing is not. You need normally a higher size with a lot of cores and a lot of memory to have enough cache to store the 128 gigabyte HDD into this cache. And if you want to have a lower size, because while you want to have only one user on one virtual machine, then you have to waste a lot of cores and memory and money. And for that, I built in a way. Let me go to the virtual machines again. You can right click, and now from the version from today, you can shrink the OS to 64 gigabyte with one click. So one click means that I accept that. And now the process of shrinking a disk runs automatically in the background. But this takes between a half hour and an hour, because what happens, the virtual machine will be there will be a script executed on the virtual machine to resize the partition from 128 gigabyte to 31 gigabyte. That is one step. And after that, the managed disk is copied to a temporary storage account. And on that storage account, I make the shrinking of the disk and later create a new managed disk with a smaller size and attach it to the existing virtual machine. That is normally a little bit complicated, and that is an easy way to do it, but it takes a lot of time. So I don't think we have to wait for that. Another interesting thing is, and let me show my last slide. You know that you have in Azure different disk types. The ephemeral are very special because they are only exist in the cache, which means that you cannot deallocate this virtual machine. You have to delete the virtual machine afterwards. But if you go for the normal kind of this, you have the standard HDD, the standard SSD, and the premium SSD. And if you compare the prices, you can see that they are huge different. So the recommendation from Microsoft is to use premium SSD for Windows Virtual Desktop, but 128 gigabyte costs around $20. And the cheapest one, the low spinning, maybe physical HDD, that is only $6. And you have to keep in mind that you have to pay for the disk 24/7, even if the session host, the virtual machine, is deallocated. And what I thought is, it could be a good idea to switch to the cheapest HDD after deallocating a virtual machine and do it in the opposite direction. If you start the virtual machine, then first switch the disk type from HDD to the premium to have the better performance. And that is what I built into WVDAdmin as well. Let me show it in my Azure portal. So I think that is not running. So let me check this first. So this virtual machine, that is one of my my gold master, that has a standard HDD, so one of the low-cost disks inside. And if I go to WVDAdmin and start this virtual machine, I have to wait for generating the SAS token. Bad. Give it a second. There's one async task which doesn't run async, and that is generating a SAS token, which is needed to copy the content of the managed disk to the storage account. So let me open another WVDAdmin to not break this part. So connect, log in. Go back. And then let me select the same virtual machine, the TWVD basic 20. Virtual machine, templates. And the virtual machine is still HDD. And if I start the virtual machine, then we can see that it first changed the disk type to standard SSD, that is what I have configured for this virtual machine. It could also be premium, and then it starts the virtual machine. And that is very, very cool, I think, because it takes 3 to 4 seconds to changing the type. And after that, the type is then, if I refresh it, the faster type. And then the virtual machine runs with this faster disk. And after that, and I think you believe me, if I go for deallocate this virtual machine, sometimes the allocation takes longer than rolling out a virtual machine. Then it would do the opposite. It would switch back from SSD to the cheap HDD mode to save some money, even for a test environment, or if you're having, for example, this golden master, which you maybe only need one or 2 times a week, or maybe only next week. So that's a good way, I think, to save some money, even for a demo environment or for virtual machine you are not use often, because I figured out that in my environment I have a lot of virtual machine, and they doesn't cost so much because mostly they are switched off, but the disk always cost money, and that sums up over the time. Okay, changing this back to standard HDD. Let me go and check this SSD, refresh HDD. So I think that is what I wanted to show you, and let me, in the last minutes, let me show you one script I have also here in my deployment of WVDAdmin. There's one script, and that is the script ITPC WVD image processing. That is the script what is used and injected to the virtual machine during the image process, creating an image, and later to roll out session hosts. And there are some cool parts in. I mentioned before that I had some trouble working with sysprep, and if you have the same issue in your automatism, maybe that is good to know that you can check the script and see how I work around with sysprep to avoid the appx package issue, where you get this error messages that, for example, Netflix is installed for one user but not for all, so sysprep will not run. That is worked around with this part, and here are some other things in which normally could prevent sysprep from sysprepping an image. So feel free to copy some parts out if you need it for your optimized installation. I'm currently in a project building disk images and rolling out disk images for WVD with PowerShell, and I use the same script to do the job on the virtual machine for preparing an image and later to roll out an image. And here's also the optimization part in, which triggers the optimization if the folder exists on the virtual machine. Yes, optimize. So, and I think I had 45 minutes, Christian, and then I think I'm okay and I'm done. I could show you hours of that, but let me finally say thanks a lot having me here.
Thank you, Marcel. Time for the virtual applause, I think. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Marcel, we have 2 questions in the chat. One from Marcus. He is asking, is there a optimization tool also for Windows 2019? Do you know about that?
That's a good question. I don't think that the VDI guys optimization pack is not for Windows Server. No, but maybe you could use some part of that to disable some unused services. But there are a lot of services in which are not exist on Server 2019. I don't know. Sorry. I have to check it, but I can check it, and I know that there are some other vendors like VMware and Citrix having optimization packs or software, which could be used.
Thank you. Then Robert asked the question. He's asking, is there any architectural diagram of WVDAdmin? He's really liking and loving your tool, but he has some issues with your documentation. So, for example, like which scripts are planned to be run where, and how to work around this spread scripts and so on and so on. So, is there some kind of guidance that you can bring?
Oh, not a documented guided, but I think the best way is to start taking a look into this script. That is the only script which runs in the image process and in the rollout process. All the other scripts runs on demand if you check the session host or the virtual machine and click on Run Script. That is the only script which runs. And if you take a look into it, you will see that there are one parameter with the name mode, and that could be generalized. So the generalized part runs in the building the image, and the join domain part runs in the phase where you roll out the session host based on an image, and that use then the parameters, which comes directly from triggering the script from WVDAdmin. Or feel free to reach me out and then let us talk about it. I think that is the easiest way.
Yeah, you can record that, do a Q&A and put it to the YouTube channel.
All that, yeah, sounds good.
One other question, talking a little bit into future projects. Can you give us a sneak peek or a little bit more for Project Hydra?
Okay. Yeah. Let me show it. I think I have it open. So Project Hydra is what is it? That is WVDAdmin in a fancy way, but it will not replace WVDAdmin. I will still continue working on WVDAdmin and build in the new features. So that is that is where I go for. And Project Hydra will have a focus to the things what you today can do with WVDAdmin interactively. So you know that WVDAdmin is not a service you have to administrate it, but with Hydra you can do some automatism. For example, you could define a rollout profile, and that looks nearly exactly like WVDAdmin in web services. And for example, I have here one rollup profile for ephemeral disk for this virtual machine disk size, and I can do auto scaling with or without the Microsoft Power on Connect feature to in the morning roll out some session hosts instead of starting one, to have a bunch of session hosts running as ephemeral, fast and cheap. And then later, if we need more, then the engine switch on additional session hosts to cover the usage here. So that is what I'm working on. And it's multi-tenancy. That means that you can find all of your users over all tenants if you have more than one inside the GUI. That is what I'm working on. And there's if you want to try it, check my GitHub website. That is a deployable solution today. But in the preview, and I love the word preview, that means it's not ready now, but it works for auto scaling, for VDI pools, and even for multi-session host VDIs. And it had some other features. For example, you could define session timeouts on a time base. So you could, and that is what I have here, from 8 a.m. in the evening, the timeout for disconnected session is only 20 minutes. And that forces that when I forgot to log off, that the disconnected session will be logged off after 20 minutes. And the host will then switch down after the next 20 minutes, if I forgot it.
Very good, thank you. Awesome. So when do you have a time frame for the release?
Yeah, I'm still working with some customers in the preview. So that is working, and it works without issues, I guess. But not with all features yet. So I think that I will extend some feature like role-based access in the next future, and to have an automatic way to maybe nightly create new images based on Golden Master, which is then auto-updated and then captured automatically. But feel free to test it. And I'm happy about feedback. and good ideas. What happened? What do you want to see next?
Thank you, Marcel. Very good. Looking forward to Project Hydra. I think the name is cool.
I hear different
but also
things
the
about
technology.
The name.
not only the name, but also the technology.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Marcel.